The New Orleans Saints don't beat the Buffalo Bills, but they beat the allegations of being the worst team in the NFL.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we'll go through the 3 lessons learned from the loss to the Buffalo Bills, including an identity that the New Orleans Saints might be able to build off of as they move through the rest of this season. The Saints also might have cut down on the penalties, but still found some ways to make them very, very costly. And we'll kick everything off with what you'll be talking about, which is a surprisingly competitive New Orleans Saints team. We got all that coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time, being here with us this time, making us your first listen, and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The New Orleans Saints might not have beat the Buffalo Bills, but they beat the allegations. The allegations that they were the best team in the NFL. They were allegations that I pondered last week after the 44-13 blowout of the New Orleans Saints in Seattle, going up against the Seahawks here, up against the Bills. The expectation was that the Saints could potentially walk in here and get the absolute doors blown off the place by the time that it was all said and done. But the New Orleans Saints did not allow that to happen. Did they win the game? No. But did they have a series of small victories all throughout this matchup? Absolutely, yes. Let's get into what you'll be talking about.
This is what you'll be talking about.
One of the biggest things that New Orleans did was that they simply looked prepared. A good job by guys like Kellen Moore, first of all, who faced a lot of scrutiny over the course of the week. Could he be the guy that actually comes out here and shows a little bit of growth and helps this team achieve its growth, bounce back from last week? Would he be able to do it? It looks like he very much did in this performance up against the Buffalo Bills, which again wasn't a win, but it wasn't as big or depressing a loss as maybe we might have expected it was going to turn out to be in this one, especially after that showing in Seattle. I thought that we saw some good things in terms of the team making adjustments as well. For instance, the Saints over the course of the first 3 weeks of the season were under center for only about 14% of their snaps, according to our friends over at True Media. In this game alone, they were nearly 27% of their offense they were running under center. Why is that important? Because under center gave them an opportunity to be able to still do a vocal count at the line of scrimmage as opposed to going to a silent count. So using those vocal signals made a big difference. I spoke to several players in the locker room, as well as head coach Kellen Moore, about why the under center focus was there. Moore said that the cadence was a big part of it. Players said that that helped them out quite a bit when it came to just the communication at the line of scrimmage. None of this nonverbal stuff. They were able to make adjustments, checks, all those good things there. It also helped out the run game in a couple of different ways, gave those running backs a little bit of forward momentum. The Saints also utilized some I formation, Kendre Miller with a fullback dive at one point, or a fullback power at one point. So you saw some of those interesting and creative things that they did. And then the other reason that players told me that it helped them out quite a bit, especially in the offensive line, was because the offensive linemen were able to go off of the vocal cadence as opposed to having to kind of peripherally keep one of their eyes or keep an eye on what was happening at center, right, to where the ball was going to be snapped. And so instead of doing sort of the silent count hand signal by the right guard, they were able to go, which they did use sometimes, but they were able to a lot of times, especially in a hostile and loud environment here at Orchard Park, or here at Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, they were able to kind of go back to the basics and be able to actually utilize a vocal snap count, which I think helped them out quite a bit. And I'll say that the Saints actually did a good job of managing the hostile environment of Buffalo. I'm going to be honest, I didn't find it as hostile as I thought that I would. I think a lot of it was because Bills fans were kind of exhausted from last week up against the Miami Dolphins, that the Bills didn't look like the Bills. And then all of a sudden they come here against New Orleans, and then they didn't really look like the Bills against New Orleans until maybe 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter as well, because the Saints were hanging around. Not only did the Saints stay competitive through the first 3 quarters of the game, really, they were in this game up until maybe the final 5 minutes. We'll get to the turning point here in a little bit, but I think that the Saints had kept it within 9 points at one point until eventually that kind of expanded. And then Buffalo got a field goal on another possession, and then it kicked it over to 12 points and chewed another 3 minutes away from the clock or so. But outside of that, like, the Saints showed that they could be competitive. They showed that they could hang with one of the NFL's best here with the Buffalo Bills. And they did so in a variety of different ways, including trying some new things. Even over on the defensive side, they showed some unscouted stuff. Ran a little bit more man coverage, which we expected. Josh Allen, very, very good against zone, but this is still overall a zone defense. And so when they went to that and gave a lot of space to those receivers, Josh Allen took advantage of that. Josh Allen also able to take advantage of some of those man situations as well, with all the DBs' backs turned, and then all of a sudden Josh Allen scrambling and picking up some big yards. He had a big 20-plus yard run near the end of the game to kind of help to extend the score and effectively ice this game in favor of Buffalo. But you saw the Saints trying some new things over on the defensive side, all the way down to acknowledging that, hey, maybe this player isn't really the best player that should be out on the field right now, and they should try somebody else. They did that. Isaac Yiadom got beat over the top on a play that turned into an interception, with Jonas Sanker making a big-time play over the top of it. But Yiadom was beat in that play, and I'm fairly certain that that was the last snap that I saw Isaac Yiadom play for the most part on defense. The Saints then switched over back to Quincy Riley, and I'm fairly certain Quincy Riley closed the game out going into, throughout the rest of the contest. And so the Saints seeing and identifying where there was an issue and then doing something about it. So this is a different perspective that we've seen from a New Orleans Saints team in a couple of years now, where you were wondering, where are the adjustments? Where are the changes? What are they doing to kind of help themselves? Well, New Orleans showed you that. They went under center. They helped themselves in terms of communication at the line of scrimmage in the offensive line. One offensive penalty, and it was an intentional grounding penalty with Spencer Rattler just trying to avoid a sack, basically. No defensive penalties at all. No pre-snap penalties whatsoever. So you saw the value in all that. And then trying some new things on defense to try to better match up to this Buffalo Bills team, making adjustments in the lineup where they felt like it was necessary to get the better players out on the field. I mean, I think that there were just some good things that we saw from New Orleans. If nothing else, a sense of awareness for what it is that they needed to adjust and how to adjust it. And I think that that alone is a big time development for New Orleans based on what we've seen in recent years. Coming up next, let's get to the turning point as well as the player of the game, so I can tell you everything that you need to know about this matchup. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, the easiest and most fun way to play daily fantasy sports. You and I, we make decisions every single day, but these decisions over at Prize Picks can actually get you paid. It's over at Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. All you got to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections over at Prize Picks. And if you get those right, you could be walking away with actual cash. And as a part of that, like, it's super simple. Josh Allen, more or less on passing yards. Saquon Barkley, more or less on rushing yards. That's all that you got to do. And if you haven't heard, they also have a new injury reboot feature as well, to where if your player leaves early during a game and doesn't return, it won't count against you. You have so much. You can try it over at Prize Picks today. They make it super fun, super easy, and super fast. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Hey, one of the most important things that the New Orleans Saints built up against the Buffalo Bills in their performance was confidence. And if you're looking to build up a little bit of confidence as well, Rougiette Go Long could be for you. We're not just talking about another ED pill out there. We're talking about a total game changer for confidence. Whether you're planning for an evening or whether you're hoping for something spontaneous, Rougiette Go Long will take care of everything that you need. We're talking about 2 doctor-trusted medications in one dual action formula so that you're always ready. Effects can last up to 36 hours. The process is super simple. They get you connected with a board-certified doctor, 100% online. Once you're all good, it'll be shipped discreetly to your door. So now it's time to level up your confidence in the bedroom. Head to rugiet.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for 15% off of your order. That's rugiet.com, promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Make sure you use the code so that they know that we sent you. All right, family, thanks a ton for being with us here on a Monday following a New Orleans Saints loss to the Buffalo Bills. We're taking a look at some of the positives that have come out of this matchup because we expected the loss to be the loss, but the way that the Saints competed and the confidence that they showed, the preparedness that they showed, I think are all positive things. But you saw that kind of build up over the course of the first three quarters, even into the fourth quarter, up until one specific moment. Let's get to our turning point.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
For me, the turning point in this game came when a Nephi Sewell roughing the punter or roughing the kicker penalty took place on a Buffalo Bills punt. The New Orleans Saints were down at the time with just over 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, just 9 points. They were trailing 28-19. Not ideal, still multi-score, but a very manageable deficit with a manageable amount of time left on the clock. The Saints had only 4 penalties in this game. 3 of them were on special teams. One was holding on a return. Another was a short kick by Blake Grupe that did not make it to the landing zone second time in 3 weeks, I believe, that has now happened. And then that roughing the kicker penalty on the punt that took the Saints from getting the ball back to a fresh set of downs for Buffalo that they then turned into a field goal on the other end, extending that 28-19 lead to 31-19 and chewing about another 3 minutes off of the clock, which might be the most important part of that. Because in any case, the Saints were still 2 touchdowns shy. The difference being that 9 points was a touchdown on a field goal. So you turn that from a touchdown on a field goal to 2 touchdowns. And then Buffalo was also able to take that clock from over 5 minutes to just barely over 2 minutes. And so the Saints didn't have a lot of opportunity left at that point to be able to close such a wide deficit and a widening deficit on top of it. So even though the Saints were only penalized 4 times in this game, and only one of them was on the offense or the defense, with none actually on defense at all, the Saints still found some way, could not help themselves, but to find some way to have a major impact due to a critical penalty that ended up being very costly. In the weeks before, we've seen third down penalties that went from the Saints getting a potential punt to them giving up a touchdown or a field goal by the time that drive was all said and done. And then now this one on a fourth down where they're guaranteed to get the football back turns into instead a roughing the kicker penalty. And then that turns into a field goal and effectively the icing of the game at that point. So it was a tough situation and a tough moment for New Orleans that I absolutely look at as the turning point. It's not that the Saints were winning and then all of a sudden they lost with that, but they had a chance to maybe build a little bit of momentum towards a potential game that they could steal by the end of it, to getting a little bit out of sorts because the deficit was wider, the time was narrower, and the game plan was obvious, and Buffalo was able to pin their ears back and get after Spencer Rattler, which they absolutely did during that last offensive drive. Now, as we take a look at all of that, I want to consider a player of the game, because he leads us into what we'll wrap up the show with, which is our look at the lessons to be learned. There was one young player that was an absolute standout, and he was the player of the game.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Should be no surprise at all that my player of the game here is rookie safety Jonas Sanker. He might have been the best player for the New Orleans Saints on the football field on defense and most of the offense, with the exception of Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller, who both of which deserve shout outs as well. But Jonas Sanker just did things that we didn't expect the Saints to be able to do as a whole up against this Buffalo defense, this Buffalo offense. Buffalo offense doesn't give up the football a ton, but you try to take the opportunities where you can. Saints Pete Werner dropped a gift early on in the game, but then Jonas Sanker coming up with a big interception down the right sideline of the field, offensive right sideline of the field, on a play where the route runner beat Isaac Yiadom over the top, and Sanker was just simply able to close. Josh Allen might have put too much underneath it, but in that case, we just haven't seen the Saints be this opportunistic defense. for some time. And I say for some time going all the way back to last season as well. Because remember, the Saints started off strong in takeaways last season, but after Dennis Allen was fired throughout the rest of the year, they only had a couple of takeaways for the rest of that season. And so for New Orleans, like this play by this young player was a staple moment for them to kind of show like, oh, look, there's some young talent here that can absolutely be, grow into being good players. And I think Jonas Sanker is absolutely that guy. And let's not forget that the play right before that, he also broke up a pass, getting his hand up and knocking a pass down. And then at a later point, down one of the sidelines, he ends up breaking up another pass, getting up and making another physical play at the potential catch point there. And so I thought that rookie safety Jonas Sanker was maybe one of the best players on the football field for New Orleans, or at least in a New Orleans Saints jersey going into this game, or not really going into this game, right? He was a rookie going into this game, but coming out of the game, he looked like one of the best players, if not the best player on the field. So I give him a shout out as player of the game. But of course, I give the honorable mentions to guys like Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller, who combined for 135 of the Saints' 180 plus rushing yards. Spencer Rattler getting some rushing yards in there as well. And to me, that was a big, big moment for New Orleans because it taught them a little bit about what it is that they need to know about themselves as they move forward. So we'll get to that next. Let's take a look at what it is that the Saints learned in their loss to the Buffalo Bills, starting off with a ground game identity that they should be looking to build around. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy, those fantastic energy shots that you know and love, now in 17 bold flavors. 0 sugar, 0 crashes, 17 flavors. That's the way that you should want your caffeine for the day. Those little 2-ounce shots pack the caffeine of a 12-ounce cup of premium coffee, but without that afternoon crash. And like I said, some fantastic flavors, including my favorite, blue raspberry. The thing that I love about 5 Hour Energy is the flavors that you know and love. And that's what I love about those. And also sort of the compact, portable size that you can take them with you on the golf course. Keep that energy up all through the back nine. So enough with those boring, flavorless caffeine drinks. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get your favorites that you know and love, all in those bold flavors, or you can be bold and try something new on the store today online at 5hourenergy.com. Use the digit number 5 or on Amazon today. With the NFL season rolling along, FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 as your first bet. You can get $300 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Pick a bet. Put down $5. If it hits, you'll instantly unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. The New Orleans Saints going into next weekend's game back at home up against the New York Giants. 1.5-point underdogs on the road. Could they finally get their first win up against a Jackson Dart-led New York Giants team that's now without wide receiver Malik Nabers and is also coming off of a big win against the Los Angeles Chargers? Great game to get in on, as well as some of the other great action all around the NFL. You won't want to miss out on any of it, from the odds lines, player props, same game parlays, and even live betting. You can find it all. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com today to download the FanDuel app and get started. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. I got 3 lessons learned for the New Orleans Saints in their loss to the Buffalo Bills. Now I want to continue on the trajectory where we just left off with Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller. Number 1 is that the New Orleans Saints have an identity that they can now build off of, and it is that of a run-first offense. We've been waiting for this all season. So far, all season, it's been 3 games, 4 games now, but you get what I'm saying. We've been waiting for this the entire early portion of the 2025 season, was to see the run game finally come to life. And the Saints needed it to happen in this game. It was going to give them their best chance going up against the Buffalo Bills, but it was also going to show that they could take advantage of weaknesses for another team. Let's make no mistake about it. The Buffalo Bills are the worst rushing defense in the NFL. They're awful, 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 awful against the run. But we've watched this New Orleans Saints team, even when it looked better in years past, going up against teams where they should be able to exploit weaknesses and struggle to do it. So it was refreshing to watch Kellen Moore and the New Orleans Saints waltz in here to Buffalo, knowing that Buffalo is a team that struggles on the ground, and that they were able to put up the numbers that suggest that they were attacking the weakness of the Buffalo Bills. So one, it showed you I guess I would say a logic or a pinpoint accuracy of how to attack the weakness of an opposing defense. And then secondly, it showed their concerted effort in doing so. Again, those under the center snaps, giving the Saints run game a lot of different benefits that we highlighted earlier on in the show. And so for all those times we've watched New Orleans fail to be opportunistic and fail to go out there and do what it is that their opponent struggled to stop, the Saints used one of the Buffalo Bills' weaknesses in order to be able to create production over on the offensive side of the football. I think that was a very wise and smart decision, an encouraging result, and a result that shows that Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller, 70 rushing yards for Kamara, 65 rushing yards for Miller, 19 total touches for Alvin Kamara, that those two backs could finally be that 1-2 punch, that tandem at running back that the New Orleans Saints so desperately needed in the early portions of the season. And watching the Saints be committed to their run game all throughout for as long as they could be, and Kellen Moore sticking with that game plan, very promising there as well, and that he was able to put together a run game with Trevor Penning in the lineup, with Taliesin Fuanga in the lineup, with and without Cesar Ruiz in the lineup. Those to me were all very promising and encouraging signs. That's lesson number one. Lesson number two is that the New Orleans Saints do not have the defensive personnel to run their defensive scheme. That's just me looking at this. They don't have corners that are running very good as zone corners. They are press man corners. Guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry and Alontae Taylor, very physical players. We knew that they would be playing a little bit more man than we saw up against Seattle last week, where they ran nearly 90% of their defense in zone coverage. This year we saw a little bit more man coverage. Made a lot of sense, and it put those guys in a little bit more comfortable situations. But in this Brandon Staley zone match scheme, they're still going to have to get more comfortable playing zone defense. So just by saying that they don't necessarily have the personnel to run the scheme that they need right now doesn't mean that this personnel can't evolve into the personnel necessary. But there are areas where it's clear that the New Orleans Saints are going to need to go back and invest at certain positions over the course of the offseason. Cam Jordan coming up with his 2.5 sack, the third sack that he was in on through the first 4 games of the season. That's great. It's clear at that stand-up edge rusher position works really well for him. Him and that wide 9 alignment, all of that works. Carl Granderson with his 3.5 sack of the season as well. He's somebody that was coming into this matchup. Actually, is he 4.5 now? Yeah, he's 4.5 now. Remember, he only had 5.5 last season through 17 games. And so now through the first 4 weeks is already at 4.5. So that's working for them. But Carl Granderson is not a hybrid pass rusher, edge defender / linebacker that can drop into coverage. And so when he is mismatched into coverage on a physical and athletic tight end like Dalton Kincaid, it's almost always going to end up exactly how it ended up on Sunday, with a Josh Allen touchdown pass to that very player in Dalton Kincaid. And so finding and investing in talent that can do a little bit more multiple things, so that you can then have guys to complement the players that are the edge defenders, the pure edge defenders like Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan, and soon to be Chase Young once he makes his return to the field. And so I think that those are some areas where the Saints are still figuring out how to build the personnel and find the personnel that will match what it is that they want their defensive system to look like. So that to me was lesson number 2. Lesson number 3 for me is that the New Orleans Saints have the appropriate young building blocks on their roster. We highlighted Jonas Sanker's day, a couple of pass breakups, near the top of the defense in tackles, had some missed tackles as well. Saints still need a little bit of help there when it comes to tackling, but got the first interception of the season for the New Orleans Saints defense. Quincy Riley, according to the initial stats from Pro Football Focus, was targeted once for 1 catch and 11 yards, and that was it. And this is a rookie that went out there and played the majority of the defensive snaps at outside corner. And so I think you saw some good things from both of those players. Kendre Miller going out there and getting some run and playing well when it came to that. Christian Boyd was awesome in stopping the run and trying to defend the run. Saw a lot of opportunities out there in addition to Devon Godshaw. So good to see him getting into some of the action as well. And I think there are some of those other younger core building pieces that will continue to kind of pop out and say, hey, look, I can be here. I can contribute. You'd like to see it come from the receiver room. Receiver room continues to underwhelm a little bit. You'd like to see the quarterback hit the receivers where they need to be in the end zone. Just a little bit of that timing, maybe miscommunication, recalibration that needs to be had. But you can see Spencer Rattler before the snap making adjustments at the line of scrimmage. The touchdown that was nearly there, big window for him to connect with Brandon Cooks in the end zone, was only there because Spencer Rattler added that route and audibled that route, called that play basically for Brandon Cooks and let him know, hey, this is a wide zone sort of situation here. You have the ability to be able to get in there. Let's run this route. Just all that with one nod, and then bang, the throw was there. And so I think there's still some of those little things that are settling in on a detail perspective and all those other pieces, but you can see the young core of players that are coming out and showing that they can indeed be helpful to this team, as well as even Torricelli Simpkins, who stepped in place of Cesar Ruiz at right guard. So those are 3 of my lessons for the Saints in their loss. All right, last thing I want to highlight here today before we wrap up is, again, just the need for more from this wide receiver room. We saw more drop passes, only 1 passing attempt of 20 plus yards down the field. Not a lot of separation being created. When the separation is there, there always seems to be some mistiming or miscommunication or whatever it might be. There are just certain things that this wide receiver room and quarterback room need to get together and work out, right? And get going and find a better rhythm in. Things could get very interesting here soon. Maybe the Saints start leaning a little bit more to tight end. I think we'll see Foster Moreau coming off of the physically unable to perform list pretty soon so he can get back to practice as they open up his practice window. That becomes eligible to happen. Now that this game is over, he can come back and start to work his way back. So once he finds his way back to the field, which I'm certain he will here in 2025, because it takes a lot to keep Foster Moreau off of a football field, I wonder how much he and Juwan Johnson become even bigger focal points in the passing game outside of these wideouts. But more progress needed in terms of the wide receiver room and quarterbacks. Coming up tomorrow, how the New Orleans Saints can build their offensive identity from here. Don't forget, you can catch us every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. over the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, and you can join our insider program for additional content. We appreciate you very much as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you're momming them. I trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.